Hello everybody, JGC Anime here today. We're to review Tsukimichi Moonlit Fantasy Season 2. So without further ado, let's just hop right into this. So, what is the story of Tsukimichi Moonlit Fantasy Season 2? Basically, it follows our main character Makoto as he's trying to go to the city of Rosegard, where he's trying to set up his training company as well as try to learn from the school there, only to find out he actually got the teaching role and he's going to be teaching students instead of being a student himself. And that's basically how that starts, as his time in Rosegard begins, and yeah, that's not an amazing description, but we're just gonna roll with it. So, Tsukimichi Season 2, the second season to one of my personal favorite isekais. Not my top #1 favorite, but I do enjoy it a lot. I thought Season 1 was very fun, I very much enjoyed it, and while I might have overhyped it during my original review, I still very much like the show. So, how does Season 2 compare to that? Did it exceed my expectations? Did it go beyond it? Did it make it just an incredible show that was even better than the first? Nope, not in the slightest. Not even a little bit. In fact, this season was just disappointing. It was just plain disappointing. It just wasn't very good. I'm just not gonna butter it up here. I'm not gonna try to be really nice to Tsukimichi Season 2 because I'm not afraid to admit I thought this season was boring. I thought this season just wasn't that good. I thought it was really dull in a lot of ways. And what's funny is the first half of the season is actually decently enjoyable, to a certain extent, at least. Because you see, at the start, without spoiling anything, we actually have some interesting experiences while following Makoto on his teaching journey and stuff like that. But then you have some other side stuff with some other characters that I won't spoil right now. But we have some stuff with some other characters, which is so just mundane and bleak that I don't really care about them at all. And that's kind of a problem with this season. There are so many side characters that have to get introduced, they try to develop and focus on, that Makoto gets pushed to the back a lot of the time, which wouldn't be a problem if the side characters were actually interesting. There are so many side characters in this that have these backstories and just other stories as well, where they're just talking about their past or what their goals are, and I just think I do not care. I don't care. These are so dumb. Just let us go back to other stuff, please. Like, I wasn't demanding for Makoto to come back, but with how boring some of these stories were, I wanted him to come back. I just wanted him to be back in the focus. And what's funny is, even when he went back to being the focus, it still didn't get better. It was still so tiring with how boring some of this stuff is. Like, this season managed to achieve something I didn't think was possible, and it somehow made the show feel incredibly slow-paced, but also incredibly fast-paced. Like, it did an amazing job at somehow ruining the pacing in every single way, where scenes where I would want them to be dragged out are cut short immensely, and scenes I want to be super short are dragged out for like half an episode, which there is one of those times specifically I'm going to talk about because I hate it so much, but we'll go over that in the spoiler section. But just, I really was not a fan of this season. I don't want to say it's the worst thing ever. There are some episodes in there that really stand out that I won't, again, say what they are because spoilers, but there are times in this where I did enjoy myself and thought, okay, that was actually a pretty good episode. I like that one. But they're so rare. They're such a rare occurrence in this season, especially in the second half. Like, the first half, as I said before, was all right. It had its ups and downs. It wasn't an amazing first half of the season, but it was fine. But then when we get to the second half, everything just goes so bonkers. And instead of feeling happy with how things were turning out, I was just thinking, why? Why are we doing this? Like, I've seen so many people try to defend this, saying, oh guys, we had to have all of this happen in order for this big climax that you guys are all enjoying, when I wasn't even really enjoying the climax that much. And when I hear all these people trying so hard to defend Tsukimichi Season 2, I can't get behind them. I can't say this season was good because it wasn't. It was boring. It was dull. It lacked a lot of what Season 1 had, which was the charm, the fun, and the handling of all of its characters. It knew what to focus on, knew how to handle things, and I'm just so disappointed with how the season turned out. I don't want to dislike Tsukimichi Season 2, but I didn't enjoy it. Even though I tuned into every new episode every week, there was never a week where I watched an episode and thought, oh man, Tsukimichi's back, Tsukimichi was awesome. There was never an episode where I felt that. The closest I got was one in particular episode, which I'll talk about in the spoiler section, as I'll talk about many other things there. But it's just such a rare occurrence this season for me to actually enjoy an episode. The only reason I even sat through this season was because I was hoping maybe, just maybe, it would get better. I was hoping maybe it would improve. I was hoping that maybe this season would just get better and better, which is why after the first half, despite not enjoying the second half, I still sat through it because I wanted to see if maybe, just maybe, things would get better. And I'm disappointed to say they really didn't. They were just not amazing. I really was not a fan of how anything played out, and it's just such a sad thing to see because I was so excited for Season 2 of Tsukimichi. Like, when I first heard it was getting a second season, I was already thinking, okay, that's awesome. I love Season 1. And then I heard it was gonna be 25 episodes, and I thought, thought even better. I really do want to see where things go with a 25 episode season of Tsukimichi. And then we got it, and all I felt while watching it was, really? This is our Tsukimichi season 2? Really? Because there are so many problems with it. I haven't even gone over all the things I hate about the season. Another thing I want to talk about that isn't a spoiler is the fight scenes themselves in the season. Like, Tsukimichi isn't really known well for its amazing fight scenes. That's fine. However, these fight scenes feel really dull. Like, they don't really have anything to them that really stand out. There are so many moments during these fight scenes where they're just blathering on and talking, barely fighting with each other. It's just talking, which isn't a problem sometimes, but in the case of this show, there's so much talking that half the dialogue doesn't make any sense. There is literally a scene later on where a character is blocking another character's attack with a spell, and then there's like, what? You blocked my spell? How could you? And then there's like, oh man, that was my most powerful spell. How did you block it? And then I just sit there thinking, dude, that didn't look cool. The animation for that scene looks incredibly bare bones. Like, that did not feel like some super special, super majestically amazing attack. It just felt like an attack. You're saying that was your most powerful attack? What do you mean? That makes no sense. That was not that powerful at all. And it was blocked by a literal bubble. Like, it was just a bubble with swirls on it. How is that your big, like, nandado moment? Like, what? I can't just not complain. I can't not. I want to say some positive things about this season, so I guess I'll try, but the only things I can really think of are, one, the second opening theme is really freaking good. Pseudo does an amazing job with their songs, and the first opening was fine. It was decent. Not my favorite Tsukimichi opening, but it's fine. And I guess some of the moments in there made me laugh. There were some moments that were funny. Other times I was just like, oh, this is meant to be a joke? Okay. But just, I was not super into it. I just wish that Tsukimichi season 2 was good because I really did want to love this season, but there's so many things I can complain about and not be positive about because there's just not much I can say positively because I just didn't like Tsukimichi season 2. And yeah, that's all I can really say without spoiling, so we're just going to the spoiler section now. Here's the timestamps on the spoilers, and if you have seen the show, I recommend sticking around and hear my thoughts, but yeah, you skip to the end so you get any spoilers again. If you haven't seen it, I recommend sticking around and hear my thoughts. So yeah, I'm going to cut up for 5 and I'm going to enter the spoiler section. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, now I can finally get into the real meat and potatoes of why I don't like this season. I already talked about some of the stuff, you know, the animation was dumb, and how there's a literal fight near the end where Shiki, even though he is one of the better parts of this season, just surrounds himself in a bubble to defend against Mitsurugi's attacks. And I thought that maybe we could see Shiki pop off here, but there's so little of actual fighting. And then when that bubble thing happens and all the swords disintegrate around Shiki, then you just hear Mitsurugi going, Yandato, or, you know, like, what? How are you doing that? How are you managing to beat my attacks? And I just sit there thinking, wait, this was supposed to be a dramatic moment? It was so poorly animated, I couldn't even tell. Which is a problem throughout the course of this season. Even the fight between Sophia and Makoto later on is just so awkward. Like, sometimes it seems like the action's about to pick up and then suddenly it cuts away to a new character who's just watching from a screen. I believe his name is like Luto or something. I don't know. But basically they'll cut away from that, and it just seems like the animation quality just takes such a massive dip when it comes to action scenes, and that's disappointing. While the action scenes in season 1 were always the best, you could tell where they put their budget for some of the scenes. Like, season 1 knew what it was trying to do. It was trying to focus on Makoto and tell his story and try to go through things. But this season is so just bizarre with how it goes from one thing to the next that I can't really get invested in any of the fights. And I was really excited to see the rematch between Sophia and Makoto, especially thinking that, oh yeah, Makoto's so OP now, she's gonna get destroyed, which she does, but in the most anticlimactic way possible. Like, during their fight, she starts an unlimited blade works moment where she just traps Makoto in like a world of blades, and after that he just pulls out a bow, which is kind of cool at first, but then he's like, all right, I guess I'll defeat you with my bow for real this time. And then it seems like things are about to pick up because, you know, Sophia just pulled out her trump card of like a Japanese katana sword thing. Maybe it's just a regular sword, Japanese sword, but basically she pulls it out and is like, yeah, I'm gonna beat you now. And then Makoto beats her in like 30 to 40 seconds, which would be cool if it was really flashy, but it's not. It's really not. It's super anticlimactic. And when it finished, I was just thinking, wait, it's done? We're done? We finished the fight? It's already over? Really? And just, that's the stuff that I wanted to complain about off the bat. But going back to the beginning of the season, the first thing I want to talk about are the introduction of the summoned heroes. Basically, it is stated by the goddess during season 1 that she summoned some other heroes here in placement of Makoto. And so after the first episode, they decide to focus on those two heroes for a few episodes. And I get that they were trying to squeeze them in there and try to develop them, but a part of me really wished they tried to change where they place the episodes for those heroes, because dude, they are the most boring part of this season. Like, there are parts where they shine, like where Tomoki, the messed up hero, tries to take control of Tomoe but fails because, you know, Tomoe is OP like that, which was awesome, but most of their moments just aren't that memorable to me. Like, I don't even get why they're in this story at all. They are by far one of the weakest parts, and because they tried to pace them by having all of their stories be told within a few episodes, you have characters dying, and rather than being sad about their deaths, I just think, oh, they're dead now? You're playing the dramatic music. I assume I'm meant to be sad here. Okay. Anyways. And there are times where they won't even really acknowledge the deaths. Like, there's one member, or in fact, two members of the heroes party that die, the girl heroes party, or, you know, Hibiki's party. Basically, two of her members die in this season, and despite two of them dying, I feel nothing for either of them. Even though one was meant to be built up to be dramatic, they just didn't impact me. Especially the second one, which just kind of happened. It just happened. It exists there, and that's it. That's all there is to it, and I'm just not invested in them. And then there's the jerk hero who basically just gets like these mind control powers and is trying to be all evil and stuff, being like, I won't be underestimated and I'm gonna win. I don't care. The funny thing is, the one thing I was looking forward to this season was the idea of Makoto meeting these heroes and maybe beating up the jerk hero, Tomoki, and I was excited to maybe see Makoto beat him up and just destroy him in a battle or something. That could have been really freaking fun. But no, they don't even meet this season. They don't meet in the slightest. And Tomoe doesn't explain to Makoto that, oh yeah, this guy tried to bring me under his will or anything like that. She just kind of tells Makoto about him and moves on, doesn't really acknowledge much of that at all. And I'm so disappointed because I really wanted to see what Makoto's reaction would have been to meeting his classmates from his previous world. Not classmates, but like schoolmates. And I was super excited to see where that would go. And then he barely acknowledges his senpai, that being Hibiki, and he just kind of is like, oh, hey, that's my senpai, I know her, then moves on with his Super Sentai suit with like his Power Ranger suit, which is hyped up a lot in the opening theme and only shows up for like 2 episodes and then it's done. Then he just takes it off and moves on. But overall, the whole story with the two heroes was by far one of the most uninteresting parts. Not the worst part. I'm gonna get to the worst part in a second, but they were not a great addition. I get that they were there from the beginning, but they are such a boring part, and they really take up a lot of these episodes for no reason whatsoever. And yeah, moving past that, it's time to talk about what I consider to be the worst part of this season. What really ruined Tsukimichi Season 2 for me the most, and just is the absolute worst part. And that is the story of Illumagand, or whatever the heck his name is. I don't really remember. I literally had to pull it up online because I just could not remember his name whatsoever. But he is one of the most forgettable characters in this season, and yet they try to dedicate so much time to him later on, and I hate it. Basically, in the beginning, he seems like your generic bully character trying to bully another character, and then it's built up like, oh no, he's actually misunderstood. He actually knew this character, and they made a promise when they were like 5 years old, and now the person he's bullying doesn't remember. He just kind of pretends to bully her because, you know, the other guys he's hanging out with are there. And it's just kind of a mess because then after that, one of the demons named Ronoa manages to manipulate him with some drugs along with a few other people and basically just turns the whole town into monsters. And while that sounds cool on paper, just a whole town of monster people roaming around and our team having to take them down, that sounds cool on paper, but in execution, it is so boring. And the worst part is, while they were first starting off this little monster transformation thing, we focus a lot on that elegant dude's backstory, and it just drags out for so long. Like, the episode where I think he's going to transform, he doesn't, and then the episode where he does transform feels so anticlimactic, and it just kind of happens, and I hate it, because literally half the episode we dedicate to his backstory. A backstory so boring and so stupid that I was just thinking, dude, can we get on with the actual episode now? Come on, give us the story, come on. Hey, where's the story? Come on, give it to us. And then after that, after we tell his boring backstory, we then already halfway through the episode, and then the next half is what I mentioned before with the action scenes. A lot of clamoring and talking and stuff like that, and the most cheap animation you could see, taking down this guy in his monster form when Makoto's students decide to step up and take him down, and it is just so awkwardly animated, and it feels so anticlimactic, and they're trying to build up like, oh man, it's such a sad moment for this guy, and then Mio comes in later and kills him, which is the far more satisfying end to his character. But basically, during that whole scene, it was just so boring, and I found that to be one of the worst episodes of Tsukimichi Season 2. It was terrible, it was awful, and I almost dropped the show because of it. Like, I just thought, dude, if this is the terrible writing we're going to get for the rest of the season, I'm out. Like, I don't care about this character, so having us have to focus so much on this guy, I do not care about. I don't want to be here. I want to focus more on Makoto and what he's up to, because he's our main character! And then we finally, after that, focus on Makoto as he's trying to deal with all the evacuation efforts and trying to help out as best he can, while also making a name for himself enough so that way people will come to rely on him, stuff like that, you know, some scheming behind the scenes. And that is not the best either. It's very boring. In fact, the only time this finally starts to get a little bit better is when Makoto is just walking around trying to wrap things up, only for the gods to summon him and be like, hey, you know, there's some other battles going on. Do you think you could help out with those, please? I really would like that. And that whole conversation between Makoto and the goddess was amazing. I love that so much. It was so well handled. I really love that. But then after that, we have the fight where Makoto puts on his Power Ranger uniform, which was anticlimactic, to say the least. Very, very anticlimactic. And then after that, he has his fight against Sophia, which is also anticlimactic. And while I would have loved that if it was handled a bit better, I felt the way they went about it was so slow paced that when it finally did end, I was just like, oh, okay, I guess that happened. And then moved on. And then we actually get to the final episode, which I consider to be one of the better episodes of this season, because it was just kind of the aftermath of everything that happened, and it was actually enjoyable. I actually enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. But the fact that it took like 11 episodes to get to this point, I ain't gonna sit through that just to have a slight bit of enjoyment. Like, the second half of season 2 was such a disappointment. The first half, as I said before, was fine. The hero part was a bit dull, but everything else was fine. I enjoyed myself. But then when you get to the second half, it just goes at such an awkward pace, because whenever something I want to happen just rushes by too fast, and then the stuff I don't want to happen takes forever, I just don't like it. Like, as I mentioned, that episode where the backstory was told, that whole backstory, you could have wrapped up in like 5 minutes. It really didn't need that much time dedicated to it, but they added like another 5 minutes onto it, just so they could just drag the episode out for as long as they could, and I can't stand that. I just didn't like it. And I get there's some people who are trying to defend this, saying, oh man, you guys had to sit through all this buildup to get to this amazing point. Dude, it wasn't even that amazing! Like, that match between Makoto and Sophia was so anticlimactic in a lot of ways, and while I, again, don't mind the overpowered protagonist, in fact, I sometimes love it. Heck, The Misfit of Yukio Academy Season 1 has one of my favorite overpowered protagonists, even despite the fact the action in that show really isn't even that incredible in and of itself. It's just kind of fine, but Anos is such a fun protagonist to watch on screen being incredibly overpowered that it doesn't matter, but watching Makoto be overpowered just didn't hit the same. It just wasn't that interesting, and I didn't care about it. The animation was cheap in a lot of ways, and I just did not care at all. And what's sad is, there were a lot of really interesting ideas of this season. Like, there are so many twists and turning points that when you think about them, you realize, dude, this will change everything in the story. But it doesn't feel that way, because it just happens. It's just part of the story and you move on, and it just doesn't feel entertaining. It doesn't feel fun. There's just nothing for me to enjoy here. And I'm really upset to say that, because as I've said before, I really do enjoy Tsukimichi Season 1. I still think it's one of the best isekais I've watched. Again, not my #1 favorite, but it's still very enjoyable and I liked it a lot. So hearing when Season 2 was coming out, I was ecstatic to see where the story would go next. But this season is just a whole mess. And as much as people want to defend it and say it's good and amazing in a lot of ways because of the build-up and the final story, I don't care. This season to me was a disappointment. It lacked a lot of the charm the first season had and would drag itself out for no reason whatsoever, and I'm just disappointed. I'm incredibly disappointed with how this season turned out, and I'll watch Season 3, I guess, but unless they could somehow recover from this, I don't know if I'll end up sitting through all of Season 3. I'll still give it a shot to see if maybe they can pull things through and make it entertaining again, but we just have to see. And yeah, that's all I have to say. So we're at the conclusion of this video. One of my final thoughts: overall, this season was a very, very, very mixed bag, where there are parts of it I enjoyed. In fact, the first 12 episodes or so, minus a few episodes here and there, were enjoyable enough. I liked them. But then the second half is just a mess, and I found it boring and dull at times. And I really do wish that I could say I liked this season, but I really didn't. And it just wasn't worth the wait to see this series just go in such a stiff direction with its storytelling. And maybe it's better in the light novels, but as someone who's an anime only, I just did not enjoy this season at all. And I hope that maybe Season 3 could be a bit better, but if it ends up just being more of this, I'll probably end up dropping it. And yeah, overall, I give Tsukimichi Moonlit Fantasy Season 2 a 5 out of 10. It would be lower, but I did enjoy some of the first half of this season, so it is what it is. I still had a decent time at the start, so I gotta give it some credit there. But the rest of the season was a mess, so it's a very, very low 5 out of 10 for me. And I don't know if Season 3 can help make a comeback with this, but we'll just have to see. And yeah, that's all I have to say, and thank you all for watching. If you're new to the JGC Anime channel, don't forget to subscribe. I also get anime fans to the channel, and I will see you all around. Peace!